Hello, and welcome to Contemporary Moral Issues. My name is Leah, and I am going to be your instructor for this course. So in today's video, our first video, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the sorts of subject matter that we're going to be covering in this class, as well as hopefully some helpful information to guide your expectations about what we're going to be doing in this course. So things about the kind of work we're going to be doing in this class, the format the class is in, some details about the syllabus, and then finally how you should, or some guidance in navigating the course website. All right, so let's get started. We are going to be talking about contemporary moral issues in this class. Lots of ethical dilemmas and learning how to take what we might call a sort of philosophical approach in figuring out how these dilemmas ought to be resolved. So one of the major things that we are going to be doing in this class, and anyone who's taken a philosophy class before is sort of aware of what other philosophy classes that Lehman have offered. The biggest thing we're going to be doing there is we are going to be sharpening those critical thinking skills. So that's a term that I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard at least at some point in your academic careers. And basically, critical thinking is developing, or rather learning how to adopt a system and being able to analyze and evaluate certain arguments, as well as develop your own reasons for drawing the conclusions that you argue for there. So in general, in philosophy, where we form a lot of arguments, we make a lot of arguments, we have ethics more specifically, which involves arguments that are defending normative claims. All right, so this term normative is one that you can distinguish from other kinds of arguments, arguments that seek to describe the world, perhaps, in certain ways. So when it comes to defending a normative claim, what you're doing is you're defending a claim about the way you think the world ought to be or somebody ought to behave. So words like ought, should, obligated to, these sorts of things, those are the kinds of claims that we're going to defend. We're going to develop good reasons for thinking that those kinds of claims are true. And we're going to be looking at other people's arguments that defend claims like that and thinking about whether or not those are good arguments to accept, whether or not they have given us good reasons to think that this ought, say somebody ought to behave a particular way, would they give us good reasons to think that that person actually ought to behave in this way? So it's going to be that kind of critical thinking involved in evaluating different kinds of ethical dilemmas. And hopefully this will help you get a lot better at looking at not just the kinds of the specific ethical dilemmas that we're going to look at in this class, but also when you encounter them later outside school, at your job or something like this, you'll have firmer ground to sort of like really clearly identify your reasons for why you think something should have or shouldn't have happened. In doing that, one of the key sorts of things that we are going to learn are the tools that are really useful in developing those kinds of reasons, sort of grounding our reasons for why we claim a certain thing ought to be a certain way. And there, what we're going to be mostly, for the most part, focusing on are three different kinds of approaches to making or defending ethical arguments. And those three approaches are going to involve, thinking about the consequences, evaluating the consequences, thinking about obligations, people involved, what kinds of things they're obligated to do, And then finally, the kinds of characters that we think people should have and the way that that sort of might affect whether or not we think what they did was a good thing or a bad thing. So we're going to be using those principles both to construct our own arguments, defend our own judgments about various scenarios, but also in reading, being able to identify when which one of those three things is involved in someone's reasoning for making a certain claim that they do. For example, why they think that that our rights to abortion ought to be protected, and diving in and seeing, is it about the consequences? Is it about obligations? Is it about moral character? Being able to identify those principles and then seeing, sort of checking in our mind whether or not we think that those principles are the right kinds to employ in that particular dilemma, that particular situation, and whether or not the author did that well, whether or not what they're arguing for is something that, or the normative claim that they're trying to defend, is one that we should actually take on board by virtue of this good argument, or perhaps bad argument, that they've made. All right, so that's just sort of a very basic gist of what we're going to be doing in the class. Now I'm going to turn to just some general comments about the nature of the work that you're going to be doing in this course. So one thing that I'm sure some of you at least will take to be good news is that there's no essays assigned in this class. Instead, I've designed this course in such a way to give you a lot of practice in developing like the bones for an argument. So the intention there is that we are going to get a lot of practice looking at a lot of different scenarios that involve making ethical judgments, defending these normative claims, and then that should position you very well to later on write an essay, a fully explicated defense of that normative claim. So we won't be going to that additional step. Instead, we're going to get a lot of practice looking at a bunch of different scenarios. We're not going to be focusing just on one or two different things. We're going to be focusing on a bunch of different scenarios where these moral judgments are involved, these normative claims are being defended. And as a result, there are going to be quite a few assignments in this class, and you're going to have, I believe, at least 3 assignments due every week, spread out throughout the week, which leads me to probably one of the most important things for you to understand, one of the main things I want to communicate in this introductory video, and that is about the format of this course. So this is an asynchronous course. That means that, we don't obviously meet in person at all. You're not going to be required to show up to a Zoom meeting at any particular time, nothing like that. Instead, there are assignments that have deadlines, and then you'll need to complete things like the readings, watching the lecture videos, and so on before completing those assignments. Now, on top of this being an asynchronous course, it's also only 4 weeks long. Doesn't give us a lot of time. This is very condensed, which means that essentially each day of the week, the way that you can sort of frame it in your mind, each day of the week counts as one full week of what you would have done during a semester. So that's not just one full week of lecture. That's also that includes the full week of homework. It includes the lecture and that full week of homework. So what you should be anticipating is spending anywhere from 3 to 4 hours a day, or on average, you should be spending 3 to 4 hours a day on this class. So that comes out to roughly 12 to 16 hours a week on this that you should have scheduled in your week to do work in this course. And much of that is going to be reading and writing. So you're going to be reading, and then you're going to be writing about what you read. You're going to be analyzing and evaluating different aspects of what you read, learning how to explain central philosophical concepts or ethical principles. And then you'll be constructing your own arguments. So like I was talking about before, getting a lot of practice developing outlines for arguments, developing your premises that are meant to defend the conclusion, normative conclusion that you're trying to encourage your audience to draw. So obviously, time management is very important in this class. I understand that, many of you probably have schedules where you're going to have to move some stuff. Some days you might have to spend 3.5 hours. Another day you only have an hour or two to spend. But just be sure every week when you start out that week to have a clear schedule in mind where you have blocked off enough hours to complete all of your work in this class. Okay, so with that, I am going to turn to a very quick syllabus overview. And after I do the syllabus overview, I am going to do a very brief demonstration, I guess you could say, of how to navigate our Blackboard site, because that's the class, that's our virtual classroom. That's where everything's going to be happening. And I want to make sure that everybody's clear on how to use things and knows where to find all the important information and so on. All right. So first, let's just quickly look at the course syllabus. So one of the first things I did just want to briefly note, and I will show you exactly where this is on the course Blackboard in a moment, but we have something, it's on the main menu in this class called the Q&A forum. So it's its own dedicated discussion board forum for questions about things like due date clarifications. If you're confused about the phrasing for a question, if you're not really sure maybe what a question on one assignment is asking, you can post about it there. If you're having an issue, if Turnitin is doing something silly that Turnitin has this tendency to do, post it there. Let put it out there, because it's very likely, if you are feeling confused about something, if you are having an issue navigating something on Blackboard, if there's some kind of technical error sign that keeps popping up, it is very likely you are not the only one. So if people first turn to the Q&A forum, say instead of emailing me individually, that gives me an opportunity to see that there's an issue for a group of people, and then I can respond to everybody at the same time instead of individually responding to emails. That makes the response time faster. So if it's up against the deadline for a particular assignment, people are going to want to know as soon as possible, do I see that there's this issue with Turnitin, and that's why you can't submit the assignment or something like this. So making that, really taking advantage of being able to publicize those kinds of issues is really, it's going to be to everyone's benefit in the course. So if you have a question about the content of a particular question, if you feel confused about a due date, all those sorts of things, go to the Q&A forum first. Post it there first. See if somebody else posted a similar, related, the same question there first. And maybe you'll be able to get a really quick response. You'll see. I typically check the Q&A forum a few times a day, because I want to always, especially when we have this time crunch like this over the summer, I want to give everybody a really speedy response, and that'll be the best way to do it. Okay, so I talked some general stuff about the course. We're going to be looking at some, like I was saying, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be using, we're going to be learning about some basic ways to employ ethical or rather moral reasoning when we come to make these judgments about different kinds of moral dilemmas and things like this. And we're going to be learning about those principles, how to employ that kind of reasoning by focusing on particular moral issues. So we're going to be talking about abortion. We're going to be talking about political equality, economic justice, and issues in medical ethics, in particular euthanasia. So it's going to be through these sort of case studies, we might call them, that we're going to be practicing employing these ethical principles, as well as being able to sort of see them at work in other people's arguments. So that's how it's going to be learning about these concepts through practice, in essence. So like I mentioned about the course format, totally asynchronous course, so there's no Zoom meetings or anything like this. You do get to work on your own time, but it is a pretty severe time crunch. And again, you know, time management is going to be really, really important there, since we're not showing up every day to a class. You're sitting down and listening to a lecture. It's going to be crucial that you really have at least an hour every day that you can set aside to doing work in this course. And, you know, if you only have an hour one day, then you should definitely schedule it so you can make up for those missing additional hours other days of the week. So the learning goals and objectives are sort of part and parcel with what I was talking about when I was giving the general overview of the subject matter in the course. A lot of this is going to involve that critical thinking thing that we do so often in philosophy. There's a fair amount of reading in the class. For the most part, reading there is just being able to learn how to pull out the reasons that someone is giving in defense of their view. And then you're going to definitely have an opportunity to sharpen some of your writing skills. So although you're not going to be writing any essays in this course, there is going to be a fair amount of writing in this course. It's just going to be taking more of an outline form. So you're going to be really condensing the main points, getting really good at giving a clear definition of a particular concept, that sort of thing. And really getting good at answering specific questions that are posed to you. So you're going to be developing those kind of writing skills. So then later, if you take, say, another philosophy course, you'll be very well positioned to writing an essay. And if you have taken other philosophy courses in the past, and you plan on taking some in the future, this will just bolster those essay writing skills. And if you have no interest in philosophy, this is just some sort of requirement that you're trying to fulfill in taking this class. It will also help you do a much better job writing essays for any other class, and hopefully it'll make you better at writing not just essays, but emailing back and forth. I think a really excellent benefit of this class is that, you know, you're learning how to put things in a very condensed, clear, and straightforward way, which could even potentially help texting in those situations where, you know, maybe we get into a fight that we shouldn't get into via text. But hopefully this class will help you really condense some of your, it'll give you a lot of practice in keeping on checking in with yourself, saying, well, why do I think this thing? What is my reason? How can I make that reason explicit? That sort of thing. So there's a lot of different kinds of writing that the writing we'll do in this class should help you improve. So with respect to the textbook, you don't have to buy anything for this course. There is a textbook, as you'll see, that we'll be using a lot in this class. So the textbook it's Moral Reasoning by David Moreau. Because that particular textbook is massive. And there is no need for me to force all of you to spend the $115 on it, since the excerpts that we're going to be using from it are just small enough to where it's fine to just access as the PDFs I have posted on Blackboard. There will be some additional readings, and I'll explain exactly where you're going to find all of those readings on Blackboard in just a moment. But there are some additional readings every week on top of chapters that we're going to be reading from the Moral Reasoning textbook by Moreau. And again, when I'm doing the demonstration on Blackboard, I'll go over the graded course requirements a little bit more, but there's 4 kinds of assignments that you're going to be doing in this class. So the first 2 are one-offs. And then the second 2, you're going to be doing several different versions of those assignments. So the first one, the syllabus quiz, which is due July 18th. So if you are watching this video the first day of the course on July 18th, that syllabus quiz is something that you need to get done by midnight. And then later on in the week, we have something called the Moral Arguments worksheet, and that too is a one-off. It's just a series of questions, mainly covering the central concepts in the readings that were covered that week, the first week of the course. And then finally, you have these 2 different assignments, the argument construction assignment and the argument analysis and evaluation assignment. So argument construction assignments, the way that those are going to work is at the end of every chapter you're assigned in this class, you're given a series of case studies and asked to present a formal argument where you come down on a judgment and on that case. So it's going to be a lot of, do you think what so-and-so did was okay? And you're going to get a lot of practice in clearly stating, using what's called numbered premises and a conclusion, clearly stating your reasons in those premises for why you think what they did was okay or not. Sort of the moral take-home message that you think we should get from your evaluation of the actions taken in that particular scenario. And then sort of conversely, argument analysis and evaluation assignments are going to be going into someone else's argument and picking out the reasons why they think what they think, and then you sort of asking yourself, do I think those are good reasons? Should I accept their moral take-home message? And like I'm going to show in just a moment, there's a lot of additional information about these assignments on Blackboard, including detailed instructions for individual assignments. So you can see what the specific questions are going to be when it comes to analyzing and evaluating Judith Jarvis Thompson's In Defense of Abortion article. There's going to be specific questions that are going to be posed in terms of like what it's asking you to analyze, what it's asking you to evaluate there, and you can access all those specific questions about those individual assignments on Blackboard. There are, within those individual instructions, it includes information about how you're going to submit it, and the deadlines, etc. And then finally, for the argument construction assignments and the argument analysis and evaluation assignments, there are rubrics posted for both on Blackboard. I'll show you where those are in just a moment. But those rubrics not only contain just basic information about, what you need to, what needs to be done in order to get an A on that assignment, a B, and etc. But also there are, at the end of the rubrics, a lot of examples. So examples showing you what it is to say clearly and directly answer a question versus giving an unclear and indirect answer to a question. So that should really help you get started on these kinds of assignments and hopefully feel a little bit more confident that the work you're doing is good work. I'll briefly talk about this issue of academic integrity. So I won't get into it. I have a moral argument as to why I don't think that academic integrity, or rather plagiarism, is wrong because it is stealing someone's work that you didn't do. I don't think that. However, copying and pasting answers or phrasing of a particular definition or something, like just copying and pasting work that you find from the internet onto your work undermines what I am here to do and what you are here to do. Namely, get better, get that practice in being better critical thinkers and sharpening those writing skills, right? Because if I'm evaluating someone, I'm not here to evaluate someone else's work. I'm not here to sort of assess whether some person writing for Wikipedia clearly and directly answered this question that I'm posing, right? I'm here to help you do a better job in doing that. And at the same time, I also have a lot of compassion for students who, especially if you've never taken a philosophy course before, and you feel like you're not quite sure how to answer a particular question, or you feel like maybe something that you saw written elsewhere did such a better job explaining it, right? And on top of that, I recognize that this course is just 4 weeks long. There's a lot of work to get done. And when you're under a deadline, sometimes it can be really tempting to just find the way that somebody else said something instead of taking the time to write it out yourself. And especially if you are feeling kind of confused or not super confident about your understanding of the material, whether it was something that you read or something that I said in a lecture video. And I understand wanting to turn to an outside source because you feel like they got it, they said it better. And the main thing that I want to emphasize about that is it's so easy to tell when words are not a student's own, especially since I'm going to be collecting a lot of written work from people. You get a sense of somebody's writing voice pretty quickly. And what I so often find, more often than not, if a plagiarism issue comes up, is that the student felt pressured for time, or they felt like they didn't understand what they were supposed to say. They didn't have a lot of confidence in really answering the question. And they spend a lot of time working on it. Typically, what I end up finding is when a student feels confused about a question or something like this, and they go, okay, I'm just going to go and I'm going to look to the internet to see what the internet has to say. They spend a lot of time going through all of these. Well, is this exactly the sort of thing that is being talked about here? Does this really get it? Or like changing the phrasing maybe slightly so you're not exactly copying and pasting. It's so much time spent there. And it's not coming from like laziness or just this desire to be dishonest or something ridiculous like that. It's coming from genuine confusion and not feeling really confident in having the opinions that you have. So what I really strongly suggest, I mean, even if you're sitting here going, well, I'm not the kind of student that would ever do anything like this, whatever. What you can get out of my long spiel about plagiarism is if you're feeling confused, if you're feeling kind of overwhelmed by the material, even if you're under that crunch of a deadline, sit, close your eyes, take a breath, and just think about what you do now. Or just repeat back to yourself what the question is asking. Think about the things that the question is asking you to explain. Identify the specific thing that you feel confused about. And then if you still feel confused after you've taken a breath and you close your eyes, I mean, I'm talking 15 seconds there, you can either go to the Q&A, post your question saying, you know, I I really don't understand the difference, say, between reasoning with consequences and utilitarianism. I really don't get how to explain that. Like, they seem like the same thing. Is anybody else feeling confused about that? Say that there. Or if you don't feel comfortable posting that in the Q&A forum, like if you're feeling like, I just should have gotten this, it would be embarrassing. I bet everybody else understood it, which they likely didn't. But if you're feeling that way, then email me, ask me your question, let me know what you feel confused about. You could even say, this is the answer I think I should give, but I'm not really confident that that's the right one, or I feel like I'm maybe missing something here. Anything like that. And even if, because this is the time crunch here, right? Even if you are sending me that question, that email 2 minutes before midnight when the assignment is due, what I will offer you is it's very unlikely I would be up and respond to an email at midnight, but maybe you'll get a response from me before midnight. But if you don't, what I will allow you, if you send me your question, if you express your confusion, you just kind of spell it out, either on the Q&A forum or via email. If you don't get full credit on that question, if you get a 0 on that question on the assignment, I will let you resubmit it. So instead of copying and pasting, before you copy and paste, either post your question to the Q&A forum or send me an email. That is going to be your best bet in doing well on that question, even if you don't end up getting credit on it the first time around. All right, so finally, we have the course schedule. I just want to sort of go over how this is laid out very quickly. You have the readings, possibly other assigned media, or rather, no, it's just you're just going to be, so all of the readings that are required for that week, the lecture videos that you need to watch, or video, except for this week, it's just one video. And then a list of the assignments and their due dates for that particular week. So like I say at the top, all assignments are due at midnight. So you always, whenever you see the date, that just means midnight. So the first week, we are going to be getting the basics in concerning some of the stuff I was talking about in the beginning, like the whole premises and conclusions. When I said that learning how to present your argument as numbered premises and a conclusion. The other video posted that you need to watch for this week will explain how to do that in detail, as well as an introduction to moral arguments in particular. And then you'll have a little bit of work to do based off of all of those things. Importantly, again, you have the syllabus quiz that is due the first day. I have to collect work on the first day of the course because the verification of enrollment is due the following day. It's due on the 19th. So in order for me to verify, yes, you're in this class, which, there's a number of reasons that it would be really bad for you. If I couldn't verify it, first and foremost, the registrar would kick you out of the class. And then second, that could mess with any possible like financial aid stuff, loans, things like this. So it's really important that everybody submits that syllabus quiz by midnight on the 18th. The second week, we're going to dig into some stuff concerning reasoning, forming moral arguments, invoking this idea of obligation. So that's generally a kind of way that you can reason within a moral argument. And then separately, there is a whole ethical theory that is built around that kind of approach. So it's not just, oh, well, people have that obligation, they should do it. It's an ethical theory that says people satisfying these obligations they have are the dictates of what is right and what is wrong. So that's that kind of approach. And then we're going to do a sort of we're going to analyze a specific moral dilemma concerning abortion in light of that ethical approach, or that kind of moral reasoning in that ethical theory. And then the week after, we're going to be thinking about our moral judgments that rely on these arguments concerning consequences. So something being good by virtue of its consequences, or something being the right thing to do by virtue of its consequences. And there, the case study that we're going to, or rather the ethical dilemma that we're going to be looking at is this distinction between what gets called active and passive euthanasia. So it's the difference between, say, a doctor letting someone die, letting a patient of theirs die, versus, actively participating in their helping them die, like a drug cocktail or that sort of thing. And then in the final week of the course, we are going to be thinking about moral character, and we're going to be looking at arguments that involve people doing things for the right reason, sort of cultivating a kind of moral character where at the root of the decisions that they make is this good person, and the things that they do are sort of good by virtue of their having this kind of moral character. And what we're going to be looking at there are some connections with political equality. Specifically thinking about, well, if it takes practice to develop a good moral character, then what does the government owe us in terms of putting us in a position where we're able to cultivate that good moral character, right? If you probably need food and shelter, and maybe even access to healthcare in order to really have the time and energy to spend and to develop that moral character, or some people do at least. And as a result, do we want to think that the government owes us that? Is that something that's necessary in order for us to be equal to one another, have equal moral characters of equal value with respect to one another in society? So anyone that has disability, spoke with the disability offices. If you need some kind of accommodations made in the course, it would be great if you could let me know. And if you are worried that you may have some kind of, that you need some kind of accommodation made, you need something on file so you could maybe have longer time to complete assignments, something like this, then there's the information for disability services. Okay, so very quickly, we are going to do a very brief how to navigate the course Blackboard. So this is, it just says student preview mode is on because that's the only way that I can make my Blackboard look somewhat like the Blackboard you see, although I'm sure that there's some variation in it. So in the sidebar here, you see a few different, or rather in the main menu here, you see a few different options. Announcements, I am going to be using that function of Blackboard a lot. And I send out an email notification version of it when I do, which makes it very important that you verify your campus email address. I cannot tell you how many times I have students that, I don't hear back from them until much, much later. Oh, I'm so sorry. I missed I didn't know this was due. I didn't hear about this thing. I didn't hear about this change or something like this. I didn't realize, I had my, my old Brooklyn College email on Blackboard. So yeah, the first thing you want to do in this class after you watch this video, if you haven't already, verify your campus email address, because in that way you'll be sure to get all of when I send out the mass messages, the mass announcements, you'll also get those to your email. You won't miss any important information. Syllabus. pretty straightforward. So here under helpful resources, I put together just a calendar with specific assignments that are due. So if you wanted, you could grab a screenshot, you could download these images, even take a picture with your phone. You could print them if you like, put them somewhere where they are in your line of view, because like I said, there are a lot of assignments due throughout the class. Even though this is an asynchronous course, we don't have to meet at a specific time. There are a lot of assignments due that are every week. So you really need to stay on top of those deadlines, because I'm unable to accept any late work unless, I get a doctor's note or something like this, because we have such a short period of time to get everything done in this class. So it's really important to stay on top of those assignment deadlines. Next, you will see we have the rubrics for the argument construction and argument analysis and evaluation assignments. So there again, we have some just basic requirements for those assignments. What an A looks like, what a B looks like, etc., as well as a lot of examples that'll hopefully give you a better idea of, what clarity looks like, what a direct answer looks like. I'm sure many of you have received comments from instructors in the past saying things like, oh, what you say here is unclear, but it's not really clear to you what their standard for clarity is. So that's a place that I make all of that hopefully clear. And then finally, we have the Q&A forum. As I mentioned, this is the place you want to go to ask questions about things you feel confused about, including something, it could be something as specific as like, is anybody else confused about how we're supposed to answer this question? This particular concept, I didn't really understand it, that sort of thing, as well as issues with Turnitin and so on. So now, finally, where are you going to find all of your stuff that you need to do in the class? Where are the readings? Where are the assignments? Where are the blah, blah, blah? All right. So I break that down by weeks. So again, you have your sidebar or you have your main menu. So for this week, you click on that link. You have access to the PDFs, the required readings for that week, the videos. This one will be posted shortly, and all of the assignments. So when you click on the folder for an assignment, what you'll find is the document containing all the questions and so on for the assignment, as well as the place where you submit it on Turnitin. So what I very strongly suggest is downloading the document. If you don't have Word, there are other ways that you can convert Word docs. If you have an issue with that, that's a great question to put onto the into the Q&A, and there I can give you access to resources for converting those documents. But what you want to take, ultimately, the place where you're writing down your work, you're writing down those answers, you want it to be on the document that you download here, or you need, or maybe a file that you converted from the document you downloaded here. So that about does it for our first introductory, or our first lecture video in this course. Thank you everybody for bearing with me, and welcome again to contemporary moral issues. I very much look forward to hearing all of your thoughts, opinions, and arguments about the subject matter that we discuss in this class. Hopefully this video gave you some good information. You feel pretty solid about the expectations for this course, where you need to find all the work, readings, etc. If you're confused, if you feel like you missed something, if something needs clarifying, you're more than welcome to post it on the Q&A forum, or if you would like to email me about it directly, you're more than welcome to do so. And in the meantime, I hope everyone has a good rest of the day. Thanks so much.